Hey, I'm Jill Riley from The Current's morning show here on Minnesota Public Radio. And I don't even have words for what I am right now, but I can tell you that I'm excited. I'm a little wigged out. I've been looking forward to this interview ever since I heard that we had an opportunity to talk to our guest today. I thought, okay, this is going to be awesome to be able to meet and talk to a couple of guys whose music was just such a big part of my upbringing, and music was such a big part. We always had music playing in my house when I was growing up. Luckily, my parents were cool enough to get MTV in the mid 80s. Don't tell them I said that. I don't ever want them to find out that they were cool, but it really kind of formed the basis and shaped, my musical taste. And it's one of those cool things that we get to bring you an interview. This is the way that we've been doing it, and keeping you close to, the artists that you hear on The Current, the artists that perhaps had a big influence on your musical taste. And certainly very excited to talk to Curt Smith and Roland Orzabal from Tears for Fears. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. This is great. This is an awesome way to spend an afternoon. Curt, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm trying to kind of get comfortable, but I'm good.
It's good. And, it's been really interesting to, talk to musicians, talk to bands. And it's like everybody's kind of in the comfort of their own home, which has been just this kind of new way that we've been doing things. We're talking to you today because you have a new record on the way, which is very exciting. I was just talking to a friend. I'm like, I'm going to talk to Tears for Fears tomorrow afternoon. And they're like, what's going on? What's their news? I'm like, well, they've got a new record on the way this winter. It's called The Tipping Point, and we've been playing the title track on The Current. So it's great to have you join The Current. Curt and Roland, I want to talk about the new record because it's been a while, like 17 years since the last one. So I do want to talk about the new record. But certainly, it's been, what is it, the year 2021. So it's been 40 years since you formed the group Tears for Fears. I mean, how does that feel? I mean, to kind of look back, be like, wow, that was 1981, 40 years ago. I mean, how does that feel for you guys?
It feels like it was only yesterday.
Yeah?
No.
It feels like it was 40 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I don't think it's something you think about that often. I think that other people tend to remind us. I think we're more wrapped up in our own kind of worlds that those things don't matter as much. It really is dependent on whether we're enjoying ourselves musically or not. So in that sense, I mean, it is a little strange when I think that next year, Mad World, which was our first hit in the UK, came out 40 years ago. And I'm thinking, my oldest is 22, and that was nearly twice her lifetime ago. It can be a little strange if you sit down and think about it, but it's not really something we spend a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned the song Mad World and Curt, talking about, my daughter is 22, and, that kind of puts things maybe into the perspective of a timeline. But, that song in particular, I think the cool thing maybe about thinking about maybe the length of time that you've been together is, every 5 to 10 years, I feel like there's this new musical generation of people that are discovering your music for the first time. And I think Mad World is such a great example of that, especially when it was used in the movie. It was covered, the movie Donnie Darko, which obviously but that was such a moment where, a song I think really came back around. And then what was it just last year that you and your daughter did a cover of it?
Yeah, I mean, we were asked to do it weirdly by my wife's boss, and I think it just resonated because it was during lockdown, and it's me and my daughter. So it kind of took on a different meaning. I mean, it was literally just I think we did 2 takes. The first one was wrong, then the second one we're like, that was fine, that's good enough. But it then became this sort of viral thing, which I found interesting. But I think it was because of lockdown and because it was a father and daughter doing it together. But and I think, you know, when you're saying about people, younger people, suddenly our music resonating with them, I think, you know, the albums like The Hurting and songs like Mad World, which was from The Hurting, resonates with younger people because that was the age we were when we wrote that album and when that album was recorded. So the emotions we were feeling then are still valid emotions to 18 to 25-year-olds now. So I think, you know, if you're writing from the heart and you're writing with honesty, I think that that's why music lasts a long time, because a new generation who are at that age that you were when you did it and when you recorded it, when you wrote it, will relate to it. Then, you know, that's just the sign of good music and honest music to me.
And you know, Roland, you know, when you think about kind of the beginning of Tears for Fears, I know that the two of you played in a different band together that was more.
Yep.
It was like I was tracking down some videos. It's easier to go down the rabbit hole when anything on the internet, but I was tracking down some pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, look at, you know, like total mod band, which it was like, I assumed that was the kind of band that you want to get out and play live all the time. You know, when did you guys realize that you kind of wanted to do your own thing and get more into the studio? Like, when did you realize that, oh, like Curt and I are going to click doing this thing together?
Well, we were, as you said, we were in this kind of mod band. There were 5 of us. We used to wear suits on stage and jump around and act very stupid. We weren't a very good example of that kind of music. We was kind of learning our craft quickly. And then it was there was this huge work ethic within the band and the manager we had at the time, and they just, you know, it was decided that we needed to, you know, take our own PA with us everywhere. We needed to put on blue boiler suits, and we'd need to put on the boiler suits over our suits to put up the PA. Then we'd do the show, and then we'd take the boiler suits off to do the show. Then we'd put the boiler suits back on to take the PA down. We only did a 2-week tour of Germany, and Curt and I are in tears because we want to go home. We are so we're the sensitive types, you know, and. Yeah, I mean, it was really bad. We couldn't hack it. And at the same time as this was going on, we were sitting together in Curt's flat in Bath, and we were listening to Radio 1, and in at number 1 was Gary Newman, Our Friends Electric. And we were like going, whoa, what the hell's going on? And that really was the big hurrah for the new synthesizer movement. Electronica was hitting things big time. And then all of a sudden, wanting out of the band, embracing Arthur Yanov's, the Californian psychologist's Primal Theory, meeting someone who gave us his recording studio to make demos in. He had a synthesizer, or else we would never have been able to do it. His name is Ian Stanley. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, we understood that form of music far better than all the mod pop stuff. And we took to it, absolutely took to it. And suddenly we were in fashion. You know, we changed our hair, we changed what we wore. And then all of a sudden we got interest from record company.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, in the beginning, it was, you know, I'm sure you were just kind of amazed by, you know, playing around with all of this new equipment, you know, like a drum machine and a synthesizer, and just kind of getting into, you know, the feeling of, you know, how can we use this as a tool? But then when it came to, you know, the actual songwriting and the lyric writing, how did that partnership work?
Well, I mean, I'd always written songs since I was 7 years old. You know, that never stopped. Even when we were in as Curt was saying earlier, we were in a heavy metal band when we were 14 and 15, and we were covering sort of Led Zeppelin, Blue Oyster Cult. But even then, we had original songs. It's just that when we formed a duo, what we started singing about changed radically. And instead of just talking about nothing much, we started to express our feelings. Those sensitive guys who couldn't stand more than 2 weeks touring. We were talking about isolation, about depression, about sort of some kind of existentialist, some kind of existentialist hell that we were in lovely Bath in England. But yeah, and we were just good at it, and it all started to make sense, and came to a beautiful head with Mad World when we released that as our third single. Just climbed slowly up the charts, and then we were off.
If I can add to that, I mean, just to add, I think there's an amazing thing that happens when you're actually honest. And so what happened for us was we started singing and recording things and emotionally and lyrically stuff that was far more honest. As Roland said, the things we were doing before were kind of vacuous pop songs, which we thought was the way to garner some success. Weirdly, when you're more honest, you're more likely to be successful. Mm-hmm. So I think what happened with us is we started writing and recording things that meant something to us. And you couldn't deny when you listened to them and saw us that they meant something to us. So I think that was the big difference.
Yeah. I'm talking with Curt and Roland from Tears for Fears, The Hurting and Songs from the Big Chair and The Seeds of Love. I mean, these just big records from the 1980s that so many people, again, like Curt, you said, when you're honest, it's relatable. I mean, again, we were talking about Mad World and how that's crossed generations, where those feelings are always there. The generations pass, but actual feelings and emotions never go away. Now, eventually, after the 1980s, it was time to be done. It was time to take a break, and so I wonder, at what point did you decide, okay, we're going to come back together as Tears for Fears and do what we do best?
Well, I personally was, I think, getting a bit sick of the sound of my own voice, making music. I'd produced a couple of albums as well. I enjoyed that. One day, I think that I had was it a fax or a phone call? No, it was a fax, wasn't it? It was something I had to go, and we had always had business interests together. We couldn't get rid of them. So I had to do something for Curt, which I didn't have to do. And he sort of sent me a fax saying, "Thank you, call me." I was thinking, whoa, call him? What am I going to, because we hadn't spoken for 9 years. But eventually I did. And it was all the sort of resentment that was there from our split up at the end in 1990 had completely gone. We talked, my life was different. My experiences were different. Curt was sounding strangely mid-Atlantic, talking about inspiration and motivation and direction. And I was like, what the hell? We sort of, we realized there was no bad blood anymore. So we got together in LA and we started doing some writing, and we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know at all. And we didn't have any expectations, so therefore we didn't have any pressure. But of course, there was a lot of interest from the music industry. And I think we only had about 2 or 3 new songs, and someone wanted to sign us.
And so, Curt, do you remember that moment? Do you remember sending that fax? Which is so funny to hear now, a fax.
A word, the word fax. Weirdly, we were discussing, I was at dinner the other night, of just, as far as technology goes, faxes were a very short-lived thing. like they were, that's how you communicated for a while, certainly in business. And then, and now you're, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be, later going, who uses faxes anymore? But no, yeah, I mean, I remember, yeah, I mean, I think that once we met again, all the things that went wrong at the end of our, sort of time together up until 1990 just really didn't seem that important. I mean, Roland had a family at that point. I was just about to start a family. And I think what happens, certainly when you are planning and then have kids, is that those certain things that seem so huge and important to you when you're younger really aren't that important anymore, because you have something that's far more important. This is kind of, what I would say to my kids a lot is, it may seem huge to you now, but trust me in, not that they believe you, but trust me in sort of 10, 15 years time, it really is not going to be that important. So all of that had gone, and we got together, and it was a tentative start. We just thought we'd get together and see if anything kind of gelled. And there was no pressure on us particularly. We didn't have to do it. We didn't need the money. We weren't looking for something. But then we got this, we got this song, Closest Thing to Heaven. And suddenly I was like, oh, that's kind of what we do together. There's something about us singing together that makes it different to anything and recording together, that makes it different to anything that we could possibly do individually. So that's when it all started up again. It kind of made sense.
Yeah. And so then the result there, Everybody Loves a Happy Ending. That was that record.
Yeah.
So 2004, well, now we fast forward, we're, in the year 2021, and we're talking about, a new Tears for Fears album, The Tipping Point, which is due February of next year, which will be here before you know it, the year 2022. So, I said at the beginning of our conversation, it's been 17 years, not necessarily 17 years in the making, but maybe. When did the work start on the new record?
Well, I think when we did Happy Ending, we thought that was literally the end, know, and we had no plans to make another record whatsoever. We did some touring, and quite often I would go across to LA for the summer with my family, and I'd email Curt and say, well, why don't we do some shows? And it was simple as that, very, very low key, maybe 8 shows in a whole tour. But we were having a lot of fun indeed. And, although we've been away for 17 years, our music seems to rear its not so ugly head every now and again with people covering it. And with digital media, with YouTube and Spotify and streaming, our popularity has grown without us actually doing anything, which is quite strange. But we did embrace the live shows. We did a lot of festivals. We were playing with a lot of younger bands. We had a lot of younger, a much younger audience, multi-generational audience. But at some point, we decided that, hey, we're pretty good at this now. We as someone once said, we became road warriors. We were very, very good. We got a great band, selling out arenas around Europe. But we needed new material. That was the next step. But that was a long time ago, a long, long time ago. And it must be about more than 7 years where we actually decided to get together to make another album, but we didn't quite know what we wanted to do. So, cut a long story short, we went through a whole period of working with young, successful hit songwriters, and we made an album of attempted hit singles, which was very nice, but it lacked the depth that comes with a Tears for Fears album. And we decided to keep 5 of those songs We reworked them, and then we sat down in LA at the beginning of 2020, just before the first lockdown, with 2 acoustic guitars. And Curt and I came up with a song called No Small Thing, which is track 1 on the album. And that was really the key to finishing what the album that you will be hearing next year.
I'm talking with Curt and Roland of Tears for Fears. I hope that we're on a first name basis. That's okay. We're talking about the history of Tears for Fears, the new record, which is due out in February, the new year, the tipping point. We've been playing the first song here on The Current, the title track, and when I've kind of had it on repeat as I've been, coming and going to work. We've been playing it on the station, and it has this kind of beautiful, kind of almost ambient beginning. And then, when it kind of kicks in, it's like, well, this sounds like Tears for Fears, but it doesn't sound like it came from songs from the big chair. It doesn't sound like it came from the 1980s. It sounds like it came from today. And I wonder if you could tell me, because we're going to want to play the song here, if you could tell me, how that song came together.
Well, as I said earlier, we were working with a lot of external songwriters. Now, the guy we made Happy Ending with is a man called Charlton Pettus. He plays guitar with us live, and he co-writes and co-produces. Now, I think Charlton was getting a bit miffed that we were working with other guys when he knew exactly, having been touring with us for years, he knew exactly how to write a Tears for Fears song. He thought, let me get some kind of moody synthesizer, use the beat from Everybody Wants to Rule the World, a little of a head over heels piano motif, and it sounds horrendous. It sounds like Frankenstein's monster, but in fact, what he created was the germ of the most beautiful, beautiful, yearning song. Now, at the time, it interfaced with what was happening with me personally. My wife was becoming more and more ill with alcohol problems, addiction, and mental illness. And I was really, she was becoming a ghost of her former self. And so the song is really about when do you let this person go? When do you grieve while they're still alive, or do you just build up resentment? Do you grieve while they're still alive, or do you grieve when they're gone? And when do they go? Because you can sit there and watch them really, really close to death. But you don't really, they never really go because they live on in your memory. That's the least of it. So that's what the song is about. And that's how it came.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah. And I have to wonder for you, the artist, for you, the group, that I would hope that there's some peace that comes out of releasing a song like that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that I personally think that the songs that we recorded from the start of No Small Thing are, in a sense, a resolution of all the pain that was being experienced at the beginning of the album. There is a sense of release and a sense of relief and a sense of moving on and actually coming to terms with all of that. And that's what I think makes this album so special.
Well, Curt, I wonder if you have any final thoughts before, I know we have to wrap up here pretty soon. Thoughts about the new album, about the song, The Tipping Point, and, what it was like to maybe be there as, not just a bandmate, but as a friend, when making this song.
Well, it's horrendous to watch someone have to go through that. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult thing. As far as the album goes, I think, and I'll go back to what I was saying about the hurting, when we got to the point where we were making what we considered honest music, and weirdly, it just happened to be far more successful than us trying to be successful. We started this album looking for what, with the pressure put on us was to look for something new and modern that could be a hit today. So in that sense, very much going back to where we were back then, we end up doing an album that we love because it's honest. Mm-hmm. And that's the strength of the record. This record is an incredibly honest, passionate record. And I think, without question, I mean, for me, certainly now, the best record we've made. Normally when we've finished an album, I tend to not listen to it that much because I've been listening to it for years, because that's how long it normally takes us. This one I still listen to. I still, kind of go hiking with my dog and I'll listen to the whole album. And I'm very proud of it. And I think it's incredibly representative of us. And I could not have said that about what we ended up with a couple of years ago. I thought it was an attempt by us to do something that wasn't particularly honest. And the fact that this is an honest record means a lot to me.
Curt Smith, Roland Orzabal, Tears for Fears. The new record is called The Tipping Point, due out February 25th, 2022. I just, on a personal note, want to thank you so much for the music over the years. And thank you for, your honesty and candor during this interview. When it comes to, the emotions and the real life experiences that we all go through. I have this friend who said this beautiful thing to me once, that our pain is our gift to others. And I kind of got what he was going for when he told that to me, but it really has come out a lot in my life, especially in the last few years, that our pain can be a gift to someone. And so, I think it sounds like you've accomplished what you set out to do with this record. So thank you so much for talking to me, for sharing your story, for, going back to the beginning 40 years ago and coming up to the present. It's really cool to see you guys back out here and releasing a new record. Any plans to maybe tour this eventually? Or were you more satisfied with, making something in the studio?
No, we're coming. We'll be there. Starts next May.
No, there are plans for touring next year, 2022, yeah. So, yes, we'll be on tour. The plan is next summer. We're very excited about it, primarily because we get to play some new material for the first time in a long time, which was, really the prime reason why we wanted to make this record initially, was because it was kind of getting a bit, every night. I mean, obviously we have a bigger body of work, but it's still a limited amount of songs you can cull from. So now, we have a whole album's worth of material that we can now bring in new songs from. So it's going to be fun.
All right. That sounds like good news. Well, with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Curt Smith and Roland Orzabal, Tears for Fears. The new record is The Tipping Point. And we're going to hear the title track here on the radio. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to us. So hopefully we see you somewhere in the Twin Cities, somewhere in Minnesota down the line when you're on your tour. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
I believe that's in there somewhere.
All right. Good. That's good to hear. Thank you. All right. Take care, you guys. Thank you.